Good afternoon. My name is LaShawn Perry, and I am 13 years old. I'm a proud member of the Greater Fort Lauderdale chapter. I will serve as moderator for this magical event in our history.
Hello, my name is Zoe Burt, and I'm 13 years old, member of the Greater Fort Lauderdale chapter of Jack and Jill. And today I'll be interviewing Miss Dianne Robertson Braddock.
Hello, my name is Lily Brenson and I'm 12 years old and I'm in the Greater Fort Lauderdale chapter and I'm going to be interviewing Carol Robertson Braddock.
Hi, my name is Morgan Taylor. I'm 13 years old and I'm in the Great Fort Lauderdale chapter. And today I'll be interviewing Carol Robertson Braddock.
Hi, my name is Zaya White. I am 12 years old and I'm from the Fort Lauderdale chapter. I will be interviewing Carol Robertson Braddock.
Welcome, Ms. Braddock. It's such an honor to meet you. My name is LaShawn Perry. I am 13 years old, and I will be serving as the moderator for today's interview. Before we get started, and to help our audience understand the symbolism of why you are here today, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what your relationship is to Carol Robertson.
Okay. Well, I am the older sister. My name is Dianne Robertson Braddock, and I am the older sister of Carol Robertson. I'm 5 years older than Carol. I'm the middle child. We had an older brother. My brother was 5 years older than me, and then Carol. Carol was the youngest in our family. And I'm sure that many of your viewers are wondering and have wondered probably through the years, this Carol Robertson Day, what is this all about? And why is Jack and Jill doing this? And, why are we involved in this? And so what I have to say, I would first of all is commend all of the parents of Jack and Jill, all of the mothers, because in their vision, 8 years ago, they had this idea that they wanted to honor Carol and the 4 girls who were killed in the 16th Street church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama. And the reason they felt, your parents, your probably grandparents or whatever, felt so strongly about it is because my mother, Alpha Robertson, was the Southeastern, that's your region, I believe, Southeastern Regional Director at the time that Carol was killed. So I grew up in Jack and Jill. I think Birmingham chapter of Jack and Jill started when I was a teenager. It was incorporated, and we were maybe the first or second year group in Birmingham that joined the Jack and Jill chapter. So my mother was active in Jack and Jill. We were all active in Jack and Jill. And my mother had become Southeastern Regional Director for Jack and Jill. But Carol was 14 years old, of course, and she was in the teen group. And she actually had just had a Jack and Jill conference in Florida the summer before she died. So the reason that I'm always so grateful is because Jack and Jill, in its wisdom, saw the idea to honor Carol and the 4 girls every year and made it a platform in Jack and Jill that the chapters do something to honor the Carol and the 4 girls. It also helps you to know your history, and it brings you into what is going on historically every year and makes you remember some of the problems that Black people had at the time. So again, Carol was a member of the teenage group. My mother was Southeastern Regional Director in Jack and Jill, and very active in Jack and Jill. And as most of you know, the four girls were in the basement of the 16th Street Church when the bomb went off. They were preparing for a program, the 11 o'clock church service. And the youth were in charge of the 11 o'clock church service. And the youth were preparing to take over. Carol was going to be the MC of the program that day. And she was also a member of our church had a band, 16th Street had an orchestra. So she played clarinet. So she often played clarinet in the church orchestra. She was also in the choir at the church. And but this day she was emceeing the program for the youth service on that Sunday. So they were in the lavatory getting ready for the 11 o'clock service when the bomb went off. And that's pretty much what happened. And of course, the bomb sent a terror throughout the whole country, throughout the whole nation. And everybody wondered, why was it? We knew it was the Ku Klux Klan, and we wondered why they would do that in a church. Why would they bomb a church? But civil rights activity had been going on at that church, at 16th Street Baptist Church. And the people would meet at 16th Street Baptist Church. They would gather, they would get training. If any of you saw the movie Selma, you would see how the civil rights workers gathered and they were trained on how to go out and march and be nonviolent in their marching. And so the people in Birmingham were angry. People who were against integration were angry. And they said the church was sponsoring this activity. And so children would gather and adults at the church, at 16th Street Baptist Church, and they would march out into the city. And it's very interesting that that was 1963. And here we are in 2020. And listen, as I explain to you what the people were marching for. They were marching about voting rights. People in Birmingham had difficult time registering to vote. There was voter suppression in Birmingham, and people were angry about voter suppression. They were also marching for good jobs, for equal jobs. There were very few jobs at that time that Black people in Birmingham could have. They were subservient jobs. They were not the jobs that made a lot of money, that had insurance and retirement. And people said, we want equal rights. We want good jobs. And that's what they were marching for. And the third thing they were marching for was about education. They wanted better schools. They wanted schools that had the money put into them so that the children could learn, children could have good books. They could hire more teachers, better teachers. And that in 1963 is what people in Birmingham and across the South were marching about. They were sitting in to have the opportunity to have equal rights. So it's very interesting that today we find ourselves marching for some of the same things.
Wow, thank you so much. And our next question will be going to Zaya.
Good afternoon. My name is Zaya White. I am 12 years old, and it is an honor to meet you.
Thank you.
sorry. What can you tell us about your sister, Carol Robertson?
Well, I just told you some things about her. Carol was in the 9th grade. And as I said, she was very active at 16th Street Baptist Church. She was also had started to be active at Parker High School, her high school. And she was a member of the science club, but she was also helped out in one of her free periods in the school library. And she volunteered in Birmingham at Smithfield Library in Birmingham on Saturdays. She was an avid reader. She loved books and loved reading. And so she volunteered at the public library, and she was a member of the science club and the band. She played clarinet in the band. Carol also took dance lessons and was active with as I just said earlier, the teen group of Jack and Jill. She was a Girl Scout, and she had several badges. She took pride in filling up her sash, and it was full of all the badges that you could earn as a Girl Scout. And as I said, I'm the middle child, so Carol, being the youngest child, often mediated between me and my older brother. So we would stop arguing or whatever concerns we had with each other. Carol would always stop us, and she was the mediator. So we often wondered, what is she going to be? She was interested in science. She was a good mediator. She tried to keep peace. She always wanted to keep peace, and she loved science, and she was really into science. So we weren't sure what she wanted to be, but she was an excellent student at school. And she had been in some plays in 8th grade before she went to 9th grade. She had participated in a lot of plays also at her elementary school in Birmingham. The students go from, it's not that way now, but then you went from kindergarten up to 8th grade. There was no middle school. So she participated in plays and activities in 8th grade. So we're not sure what she would have wanted to be, but she was very active. And of course, she was a joy of our life because of being the youngest child.
Wow, it's nice
Thank
to
you.
know. It's nice to know that we know so much about your sister and how she's important to your life. So those are some very good details to know. Our next question will go to Zoe.
Hello, it's nice to meet you.
Hi.
My name is Zoe Burt, and I'm 13 years old. And my first question is, how can young people best honor the legacy of Carol Robertson? What were some of her most favorite things to do?
Well, I as I talk to young people, and I'm an school principal, so I've had extensive activity dealing with young people. And I always say that when the marches started in Birmingham, if you look at some of the footage now, you'll see there were a lot of young people that participated in those marches. And if many of you have probably seen the documentary by Spike Lee, The Four Little Girls. And one of the teachers in that documentary, and that is history, a documentary is actually factual. It's actually what happened. And so one of the teachers said, I would write my lesson on the board, And then I would turn around to talk to the class, and the classroom would be empty. All of the students had left the classroom, climbed over. Parker High School was about 2 or 3 blocks big, and we had a 6-foot fence surrounding the whole school. The children had climbed over, left the classroom, climbed over the fence, or somehow gotten the fence open and had gone downtown to participate in the marches. Now, everybody doesn't like to march. That's not everybody's thing. But you must be involved in current events. Make sure you know what's going on in your state and in your world. There's always something that you can do. If you don't want to participate in marches, then there's other things that you can do just in talking with your schoolmates, talking about issues, not arguing, not debating. But you must be knowledgeable about what's going on in today's world.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for like sharing with us, especially when you talked to, and I loved how you talked about the kids and how like they would go and participate in the march. Because like you said, not all people are like interested in marches and stuff, but like for young people back then, like to see how important it was and like to see why we need to go there, like that's very, very important. So I think. And our next question will go to Morgan.
Hi, I'm Morgan, and as a legacy of Jack and Jill, can you tell us what the organization was meant for you and your siblings?
Oh, I really loved being in Jack and Jill. As I said, I think I was in maybe 7th or 8th grade when we joined, when the chapter was formed in Birmingham, Alabama. But I thought that our parents was so great because they wanted to make sure we had chances for leadership activities where we had to perform, we had to put on programs, we had to put on musicals. We had all types of activities that we participated in, which made us feel good about ourselves. It gave us knowledge about what was going on in the world, and we were able to act in leadership roles. So that's what I thought was so great about Jack and Jill, as well as it being a family organization where all the members of the family could participate in different activities. But because we were taken to cultural activities, we had fun activities, but we also had to give back to the community. One of my last activities before I went off to college was to work in the voter registration activity through Jack and Jill. And so, as you can imagine, back in the day, we sat and we wrote down the names of everybody in different communities, and we went out into the communities to urge the people to register to vote. It was very difficult for Black people to vote back in during that time. But that was one of the last activities I was in Jack and Jill in high school in 12th grade, is to work on voter registration. So those are some of the many things that Jack and Jill means to me. And I love the idea that children and young people get an opportunity to be involved in various activities and leadership activities.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and I loved how you shared like about all the activities that you did in Jack and Jill. So I'm happy that you got to like experience those like when you were in high school and middle school. And our next question will go to Lily.
Hello, Mrs. Braddock. My name is Zoe Brinsman, 12 years old. I'm an artist, and this question really resonates with me. What role did the arts play in the civil rights movement? Is art today connected or disconnected to the struggle of African American people?
Well, you know, we are an arts people. So there's hardly anything that you would see happening in the Black community where arts and culture are not involved, because that is part of our DNA. When again, I hate to keep referring back to when I was working and when I was a school principal, but we always said that children have to learn academically and culturally. So arts play a very important part in our lives, especially, as I said, I think it's in our DNA. So yes, there were many artists who contributed by having concerts, raising money. Harry Belafonte, if any of you, maybe some of you know him and know what an important actor and philanthropist he is, was very active in the civil rights movement. He's an actor, and he helped fund many of the marches and many of the programs of the civil rights leaders. So there were always concerts and performances put on by famous artists. They were also very much involved in the civil rights activity, but they helped to fund civil rights activities also.
Thank you so much. And our next question will go back to Zaya.
Four Little Girls, the original docuseries by Spike Lee, and the dance docuseries by Carrie Edge are both remarkable films. When you first watched the original and the reimagined, what were your thoughts?
I thought the one with Carrie is just absolutely phenomenal. And I'm so happy because it's present day. Again, when Spike Lee did the documentary, he dealt with the time in which that happened. And so for a lot of you that are so young, you would say, oh, that's old school. But what he was doing in that documentary was giving you the facts and giving you all the information about how things were at that time, living back in the 1963 in that era and the 70s. So Carrie's production brings us full force to the present day. And I love the inflection that she has of all of the media, the songs that are present day, bringing in hip hop, dancing, everything that young people relate to now. So I think that they are both very valuable media and film to have for young people to see. And one other thing was when Spike Lee came to Birmingham and talked to my mother about the film, the documentary, he totally wanted to make this documentary. And she asked him, why did he want to make it? And he said, we have to tell our own story, that nobody else will tell our story. We have to tell our story. So I like the fact that Carrie's production has brought it forward so that young people can relate to our story. She's telling our story, and she's brought it forth in a more relatable way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I love how you said and you talked about how like we could tell a story like about our history. So that's very, very important and
It's very important.
thank you. And our next question will go to Zoe.
Do you think the civil rights movement changed race relations in the U.S.? Do you feel that progress has been made?
Yes, lots of progress has been made. The civil rights, right after the church bombing, we had got the Civil Rights Act, 1964. We got a Housing Rights Act. We had several different laws that were enacted. I think this church bombing just shocked the world. And there have been so many marches and so much activity in 63 and 64. The March on Washington happened in August, right before the church bombing, which was September. So we got voting rights out of it. We got the Civil Rights Act, the housing. We got many, many signs of progress from the civil rights. We have to keep going, though. There's still a lot, as you can see it, as I talked about earlier. Here we are 57 years later, really still fighting for some of the same things. So we have to be ever vigilant to keep our rights.
Thank you.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you what you say. Because yes, there is we have got some progress, but at the same time, like we just have to keep going and keep moving forward, and like we still like need to come together and like to fight for like what we know is right. And our next question will go to Morgan.
What do you think about Black Lives Matter and similar movements today?
Oh, I applaud the Black Lives Matter. And as I just said, we got all of that progress back in the 60s and 70s. All of these laws were enacted, but we have to remain vigilant. We have to stay on top of things. And now here we find ourselves again having to go back to the streets and fight for our rights. Police brutality is not anything new. As many of you, as you learn your history, will have heard about or you've read about Emmett Till. You've seen pictures of men and women being lynched. All of this is a part of the decay in the police system in this country. And so Black Lives Matter is very important because it brings to mind that we have to remind people that our lives are important.
Yes, that's very true. Our lives are important, and we have to make sure that like people know like we're all equal, like you need to treat us the same. So I thank you for sharing that. And our last and final question will go to Lily.
How can we as future Black leaders further the cause of Black empowerment?
Okay, as future Black leaders, I think the critical piece is to not forget and to be ever vigilant about what's going on in society. When you see something wrong, you have to say something. That we can't stick our heads in the sand and we can't say, oh, made progress and, we're doing okay, we have to look at the whole of society. Yeah, maybe some people are doing okay. Some families and some communities are doing well, but we have to look at everybody. We have to look at schools. We have to look at communities. We have to look at jobs. We have to be ever vigilant about looking at society and knowing whether or not things are going right for everybody.
Yes, that is so true because like like what you said, how some people are doing okay, but then others are not. And like we can't just sit there and be like, oh, like they'll be all right. Like no, we have to like speak up and say something. So I thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yes, and thank you, Miss Braddock. That was so powerful. Like my fellow Jills and I on the Zoom, every child imagines what they want to be when they grow up. I want to be an actress, and for the four little girls who attended the 16th Street Baptist Church were no exception. Your sister, Carol Robertson, Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, and Addie Mae Collins, though their lives were short, their experiences in the precarious space of being Black in Alabama in 1963 left an indelible mark on this country's racist past and present. And we will forever remember their names, and we will always honor them. Once again, thank you. It has been both an honor and a privilege.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I'm so happy to be able to talk to you. And I especially love and appreciate me and my family, Jack and Jill, for keeping the names of the four little girls alive and for telling the history of our country.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Braddock. We absolutely appreciate you taking this time to chat with our rising stars today. I hope they took a lot from everything that you've shared. I know that I have. This has been, a very astounding and amazing conversation, and we absolutely appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me. And thank you for all that Jack and Jill does every year to uplift the names of the four little girls.
Oh, it is our pleasure.
And of course, Carol.
PD Angie, do you have anything left to say?
Thank you. We are so appreciative of your time. It has been a pleasure. I'm originally from Birmingham, so it touched my heart. So thank you so much.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. You did an amazing job. I'm so proud of each and every one of you. I appreciate you sharing what you learned. I know that you and there are several other girls that are on this call that are into the arts and that are very musical. So I'm going to pivot over to Lily. Why don't you share with us what you learned while on this call?
One thing that I learned was as a future Black leader, you'll have to be involved.
Excellent. Yes, involvement is absolutely the key. Morgan, why don't you share with us what you learned from this experience?
From this experience, I learned that Carol Robertson loves science.
Is science one of the subjects that you're most passionate about?
Yes.
Okay. And Zaya, how about you?
I learned that Carol was a lot like me in the sense that she likes to sing, dance, and act. And I also learned that she was the type of person to break up arguments, and she was like very peaceful.
Excellent. And LaShawn, what are your thoughts?
One thing I learned from talking with Dianne Robertson Braddock is how important like the Black Lives Matter movement is, and how we all need to like come together. And like even though there are like a few there have been like some changes over the years, we still have to keep working to make sure that people know that we're equal and that we need to be treated fair.
Ladies, after the interview today, what can you do to help change things in America today? Let's go with Lily.
I can make an impact by sharing and creating art that promotes peace and equality.
Excellent, Lily. What about you, Morgan?
To volunteer in social justice causes.
Excellent. And Zoe, what's on your mind?
I will speak out for what I believe in more. And
Thank you, Zoe. And Zaya, what about you?
I will be more active in my community and know what's happening in the world I live in.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. And LaShawn?
I will exercise my right to vote because voting is the key.
Absolutely. Voting is the key. So we have to make sure that our parents get out and vote and our family and friends get out and vote. Thank you, ladies.
For
For
the
little
girls.
girls,
Never
never forget
Forget
Jack and Jill forever.
Happy
Carol
Carol
Robertson
Robertson
Day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.